Have you ever felt like your dream of owning your own home has become a silent nightmare between you and your partner? That long-awaited achievement, which seemed to be the beginning of a new phase full of plans, turned into a minefield of charges, accumulated bills and sleepless nights. Maybe you don't even argue anymore, but silence says it all. It's the kind of silence that weighs heavily on the air, that turns the home into a tense place, where each look avoids the other, for fear of sparking an argument that already seems to have been overcome by exhaustion. If this sounds familiar, take a deep breath. You are not alone, and most importantly, it's not wrong to feel this way. Many people find themselves exactly at this point, between the desire to build a future together and the weight of responsibilities that adult life forcefully imposes. The good news? There's a way to turn this game around. Today we're going to talk about how to maintain peace in your relationship, even amidst the debts, bills, and pressures of having your own home. This video is for you who feel that complicity is being swallowed by the plots, who want to rediscover the dialogue before only the echo of routine remains. Here, let's open space to reflect, understand, and above all act, because maintaining a healthy home goes far beyond the walls. It starts with what happens between the people who live inside it. João and Marina bought their dream apartment, a beautiful modern place with a gourmet balcony, social elevator, and a view that would leave anyone's jaw dropping. It was everything they imagined during years of dating, and after a lot of planning, financing simulations, serious conversations, and even some personal resignations, they finally signed the contract. The initial feeling was one of victory, a feeling of, we did it together. They posted a photo with a turnkey, took a tour on Instagram, celebrated with friends, and began putting together every detail with lots of love. But what no one saw was what came after. The heavy installments that kept arriving, the cost of living that increased without warning, the small, unforeseen events that turned into big headaches, and little by little, that dream became a constant source of tension. The breakfast table, which was once full of plans for the future, became a silent space where everyone was immersed in their own thoughts, trying not to let the weight of frustration show. What happened to João and Marina is more common than we imagine, and perhaps you also know a similar story, or are even experiencing something similar right now. At first, everything seems under control. It's just a difficult phase. We'll adjust. It's the price of achieving what we want. But this phase gets longer. The bills become unwanted daily visitors, and the couple's complicity starts to get lost in the midst of so many numbers, deadlines, and goals. João started working more to try to cover expenses, and Marina found herself overwhelmed trying to keep the house running. Communication became rarefied, as if they spoke different languages. What was once a partnership became a collection, and worse, a silent demand, which shows itself in the tired look, in the lack of affection, in the everything is fine, that in truth hides everything but tranquility. When the home becomes a source of anxiety, the relationship pays the price. And even without fights, emotional distance sets in like an invisible crack that grows over time. The issue here is not just about money or financial organization. It's about the emotional impact that these pressures have on a couple. It's about how a lack of emotional preparation to deal with the ups and downs of achieving something so desired can undermine even the most solid relationships. João and Marina were not irresponsible nor immature. They, like many of us, just weren't ready for the emotional weight that comes along with a dream come true. That's why today's conversation is so important. We need to talk about how to maintain connection when life gets tough, how to see others as partners and not as adversaries in the midst of difficulties, because owning a home cannot be the reason for the end of a relationship. It has to be an achievement that unites, not separates. And maybe you are there, listening to this story and thinking, it sounds like my life. If that's the case, take a deep breath. Do you know anyone who has gone through something like This, or have you ever experienced something similar? If so, leave your report here in the comments. Maybe your story will help other people see that they are not alone. And more than that, it can be the first step to transforming tension into reconnection. And then we come to an important point, perhaps the most important of all. The real problem is not the debt. Of course, bills are tight, money is needed, and the anxiety of seeing a negative balance every month is real. But look, debt is just the symptom. It's like the fever that appears when the body is reacting to something deeper. The real virus, what is slowly eroding the relationship, is silence. It's that feeling that you are together in the same house, but emotionally distant, as if each one is fighting their own internal battle without being able to put it into words. When there is no safe space to really talk, any small situation becomes a trigger, and not because you don't love each other, but because you are disconnected. Emotional communication is not just saying what is happening, it is being able to show what is happening, hurting, what is weighing, and also what still matter between you. Think about it. When was the last time you talked about what you really feel without talking about the bill, renovation, installment, or financing deadline? Prolonged silence between two people who love each other is like mold. It grows in the dark and slowly spreads until it corrodes everything that was once solid. Coexistence becomes an automatic routine. That affectionate touch turns into a bump. Good morning becomes just a whisper. The eyes no longer meet as they used to. Not because the love is over, but because the channel that connected each other was clogged by so much unsaid, by so much "we'll talk later, now is not the time, I don't want you to worry about that." But when we try to protect others from the burden, we end up pushing away what matters most. True presence, listening, a supportive look. The root of the problem lives in that silent place where one no longer feels heard or seen, and the other no longer knows how to start the conversation. This is where the key to the turnaround lies. The true reconstruction of a relationship does not begin with financial control, but rather with rescuing emotional communication. Is money important? Of course it is. But the basis of a healthy relationship is the ability to be vulnerable, to look each other in the eye and say, "I'm scared. I feel alone sometimes. I don't want us to get lost in the middle of it all." And this, as challenging as it may seem, can be the most powerful point of rapprochement between two people. When you listen to each other again without judgment, without rushing, with the real intention of understanding what the other is going through inside, it's like unlocking a door that has been closed for too long. And sometimes all we need is a start, a simple conversation. How have you really been feeling? And that's why this video exists. To remind you that behind the bills, there is still love. It just needs space to breathe. It needs to be fed with presence, with sincere words, with active listening. And that doesn't depend on how much is in the account. It depends on how much desire there is to rebuild together what really matters. And what most couples end up living without even realizing it is a silent but extremely toxic cycle called financial stress. It all starts subtly. The account doesn't close at the end of the month. The card bill exceeds what was expected. The bank balance goes into the red. Tension rises, mood changes, and small, everyday failures begin to take on enormous proportions. What used to be just a "I forgot to buy the milk" becomes a reason for discussion. The words come out sharp, not because the love has disappeared, but because the mind is exhausted. And then the domino effect comes in. Lack of money generates fights. Fights cause emotional separation. Separation increases the level of tension within the home, and this constant tension takes away the focus and energy that you would need precisely to reorganize yourself together. It's as if the relationship itself becomes another bill to pay, and the most painful of all, because it shouldn't be like that. And the more this cycle repeats, the harder it becomes to remember that the other person is on the same side and not on the other side of the table. According to a survey by the International Labour Organization, ILO, around 60% of people in developing countries report that financial worries directly affect their mental health and relationships. In Brazil, a recent survey by the National Confederation of Store Managers showed that almost 80% of indebted Brazilians have had conflicts at home over money. This shows that the problem is systemic, collective. It is not your fault, nor that of your partner. The villain here is not the couple. The villain is the system that pushes us towards unattainable goals, pressure for status, for consumption, for achievements that are packaged as dreams come true, but that hide priceless installments and a routine of emotional overload. The couple doesn't fail because they don't love each other. They fail because they are trying to fight an invisible enemy without the right weapons. Because no one teaches us how to deal with money in a healthy way, much less how to go through these challenges as a partner, maintaining the bond and respect even on the most difficult days. That's why, more than talking about finances, we need to talk about emotional health, real partnership, communication, empathy, because continuing in this cycle of stress without breaking the pattern can cost you the most precious thing, the connection between two people who chose to walk together. And look, it's not weakness to ask for help. It's not a sign of defeat to admit that it's difficult, that there are days when it seems like it won't happen. Fighting this silent war alone only deepens the wound. Is it worth trying to overcome everything in silence, each in their own corner, if there is the possibility of facing this together? And even better, with emotional clarity, with honest conversation, and with small practical actions that can turn this game around. Tell me, how do you deal with this in your house? Because yes, talking about it is the first step to breaking the cycle. And believe me, there is a way, there is a solution. But it needs to start with this conscious choice of leaving the automatic mode and starting over side by side with more listening, more care, and less guilt. And now that we understand the size and depth of this cycle of emotional stress that money can cause within a relationship, comes the most important part: how to turn this around. How to regain lightness and peace at home, even when the financial situation is not yet fully resolved. The first key to this turnaround is something simple to say, but challenging to practice: communication without judgment. This means making space to talk about what you really feel, fear, anguish, insecurity, without turning it into guilt or accusation. Instead of discussing the card bill, talk about what she represents emotionally for each one. Talk about fear, not the bill. When I see the account in the red, I feel like I failed. When you don't comment on anything, I feel alone in this problem. This sincere exchange, without pointing fingers, creates a safe place where the other can take off their armor and show vulnerability. And it is in this space that the connection begins to rebuild, because when we feel understood, the weight no longer seems so unbearable. The second strategy is more practical, but just as essential as the first: joint financial planning. And here's the real deal: spreadsheets aren't romantic, but they save marriages. What many people don't realize is that the financial problem itself is not usually the biggest villain, but rather the feeling of being lost, without direction, without clarity. When the couple sits together, looks at the numbers and defines possible goals, the atmosphere changes. Chaos is out and partnership is in. It doesn't have to be complex. You can start with paper and pen or using simple apps. The important thing is to make this a moment of practical reconnection. Divide responsibilities, review priorities, and understand that not everything needs to be immediate. Sometimes the romantic dinner will be at home, but it will be okay, because now you are walking together. Couples who face financial crises with emotional cooperation and organization are much more likely to emerge stronger. It's not about resolving everything overnight, but about building a more solid foundation together, and that's much more powerful than any material achievement. And finally, the third twist comes with a courageous invitation. Redefine what the dream is for you. Because sometimes the dream home is not the one in the TV commercial, with custom furniture, a balcony with a barbecue and panoramic views. Sometimes home is in something smaller, simpler, but infinitely lighter. The true value is in the peace you build between four walls, not in the size or neighborhood in which the house is located. I know couples who gave up suffocating financing to rent something more modest and rediscovered the joy of being together. Others who transformed their parents' garage into a little refuge of their own, and were happier there than in the luxury apartment that almost cost them their relationship. This isn't failure, it's emotional wisdom. It is understanding that a good dream is one that is lived in peace, with mental health and preserved love. You can always start over in a lighter way, with more conscious choices. There is a way out, and it begins when we choose to reconnect. Now tell me, which of these three strategies do you find most difficult? Communication without judgment, joint planning, or giving up the idea of a perfect dream to have more lightness? Comment here so we can understand what resonates more deeply. This exchange can help more couples than you realize, and maybe even save a relationship that still has a lot of love, just needs a new path. Take a deep breath. It's okay not to be okay. Yes, you don't need to have all the answers right now. You don't need to know how you're going to solve everything today or carry the weight of an uncertain future alone. What you need, perhaps more than anything right now, is a moment of welcome from someone who truthfully tells you that you are not weak because you are tired, that it's not selfish to feel overwhelmed even though you've achieved what everyone says is a dream. This video is not a manual nor a recipe for quick success. It is a space for pause, an invitation to breathe between one bill and another, between a choked conversation and a painful silence. It's to remember that in the midst of the mess, you can still find small places of peace. Sometimes these places begin in a phrase heard at the right time, and if you've made it this far, maybe this is yours. I know that maybe all you wanted right now was someone to tell you it's going to work out. And even though I can't promise the future, I can guarantee one thing: you are not alone. There are a lot of people experiencing the same anguish, facing the same doubts, putting too much pressure on themselves, and feeling like a failure for not being able to handle everything. But let me tell you, no one can handle everything all the time. What you feel now is not weakness. It is humanity. It's the heart asking for help amid the noise of the world, the routine, the demands. And if in this video you felt like someone really saw you, then it was worth it. Because sometimes the difference between moving forward or falling apart for good is being heard, even if just for a few minutes, by someone who doesn't even know you, but speaks as if they know your pain. This is the power of empathy, from the look that doesn't judge, from the word that doesn't charge, from the space where you can simply be who you are, with everything you feel, the way you give it. And if this video touched something inside, if it made you feel less alone on this walk, then let that come to light. You don't need to write a text. Just say, "That's what I needed to hear," or just breathe and stay here a little longer. Because this is what we need to normalize: sincere conversations, intentional pauses, real connections. I'm not here to teach you anything. I'm here to remind you of something that you may have forgotten in the rush. You deserve to live lightly. You deserve to love and be loved with less pressure and more presence. And yes, even in the midst of chaos, this is possible. It's okay not to be okay, but together, taking a deep breath, we can start to change this, one step at a time. After all that we talked about, what remains is a simple but powerful truth. Your own home can be a home or a prison. And it has nothing to do with the size, the value of the property, or the approved financing. It has to do with what happens between the people who live inside. If love becomes a demand, if silence becomes routine and pain becomes invisible, that place that was supposed to be a shelter turns into emotional captivity. But at the same time, if there is listening, if there is dialogue and a desire to rescue what matters, any corner can become a home, because in the end, what sustains a house are not the bricks, but the daily choices of care, respect, and partnership. So, if you feel that your relationship is burdened by external pressures, by limited funds, by frustrations that no one has the courage to say out loud, take a step back. Start again with conversation, with vulnerability, with the lightest touch. You don't have to endure everything in silence, and much less alone. If this video touched you in any way, leave a comment below. It could just be, "I'm living this," or "I managed to get through this." Sometimes a comment from you can be the little push someone needs to not feel alone in the middle of the chaos. It might help another couple realize that it's worth trying one more time. And if you know someone who needs to hear this conversation, a friend, a relative who is experiencing this silent tension at home, share this video with affection. Not as someone who gives advice, but as someone who extends a hand. It might save a relationship. It might help someone breathe again. We never know how much pain the other carries behind a tired smile. Thank you for staying here, for opening your heart, for allowing this space for exchange. May this be just the beginning of a lighter, truer, and more human path. See you in the next video. Until then.